Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Selby series. Selby is one of 11 subdivisions of the county of North Yorkshire. It's made up of 74 civil parishes, a lot of which are very small. Which one are we in this week? Alright, we've only got 6 to go in Selby. This one's right on the edge of the town. And we're beginning in a very cool, shady wood, an ancient woodland. And this place is called a Bath. And this belongs to the parish of Brayton. This Selby episode is sponsored by Past Days, a family history blog by June Terrington. You'll find a link in the description. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. With only 6 to go in Selby, we come to Brayton, the last one in the area directly around the district's main town, and one of the closest. This is a village situated approximately 1 mile away from Selby town centre, and its parish boundaries even include some of the southwest of the town. Brayton is Selby's largest satellite settlement and gives its name to the local electoral ward, which stretches as far away as Barlow. Like many of its neighbours, Brayton used to be a part of the West Riding of Yorkshire until local government reorganisation landed it in North Yorkshire in 1974. It does have some interesting bits of history pertaining to things like the railway line which crosses the parish to the east, and its Methodist church which has a unique tale to tell relating to John Wesley and, of all things, a chair. Brayton was first mentioned in a Saxon document dated 1030, then as Brayton. It was later mentioned as Breton in the Domesday Book. There are 4 Braytons in the USA and there's also one in Canada. However, there's only one Brayton in Britain. The UK version is a lovely place. I enjoyed my walk around this. Let's go and have a look at it. We begin at Brayton Bath, the highest point in the area, which stands some 150 feet above sea level. It's a covered reservoir which is owned by Yorkshire Water and it's well used by walkers and birdwatchers. It has numerous paths, some of which are suitable for wheelchair users. They're undulating but not challenging, and there is a rich variety of flora and fauna to be found in here. It's well worth a visit. It's got some interesting slices of history too. For example, it was the site of a beacon in 1803 when England was threatened with invasion by Napoleon. In May 1935, to celebrate King George V's Silver Jubilee, a bonfire was lit on Brayton Bath as part of the celebrations. In World War II, it even had camps which housed prisoners of war. Okay, so now we're in Brayton village itself. Now this was kind of a tricky route to plan. It is a circular walk, however, there aren't really many helpful roads and footpaths, and the reason for that is because Brayton is situated on a crossroads. Our main walk begins on the A19 Doncaster Road, and straight away we see the village post office. This does quite a lot for the Yorkshire Air Ambulance charity, having raised over £1,600 for it in recent times. There are 3 pubs in Brayton Parish and 2 pubs in Brayton village itself, one either side of the crossroads. The Grey Horse is up first. This was refurbished in 2010. It serves food which includes pizza to eat in or take away. The Crossroads is a huge traffic-lighted junction which sits close to a central village green. In 1919, 12 trees were planted around that green as World War I memorials. Some of these trees had to be replaced and one was lost when these traffic lights were installed. There's a bus stop in front of the green too. Your magic numbers here are the 405, 476, 486, 496 and the 616 according to Google. Fun fact for you, by the way, the green used to have a pond at one time. So right on the crossroads you find this massive open green area. Whether this is called Brayton Green or not, I don't know, but I'm sure I'll refer to it as that if it is during the rest of this video. Anyway, we have here the War Memorial in remembrance of the men and women of this parish who gave their lives in the service of their sovereign and country during the Great Wars of 1914 to 1918 and 1939 to 1945 and other conflicts. We're so used to seeing them now. There's a flagpole behind this as well, in its own little gated enclosure for some reason, not quite sure why. Next up then is the other pub in Brayton, the Swan. This is a family run pub which, unlike the Grey Horse, has a much larger food menu. Live entertainment is a regular thing here. Their Facebook page is linked below. Let's talk shops now. Right next to the Swan is Brayton's largest shop, a Tesco Express, which also serves the village as a petrol station. There's a Bernardo's charity shop adjoined to it too. Next, we cut through a residential estate in order to return to Bath Lane. Brayton is almost entirely residential, with the exception of a few more local businesses, including a well-renowned butcher's, which we'll catch later. Here on Bath Lane we have 2 other local businesses. Cook's Salon is a hairdresser's and over the way is DJ Motors Garage. So much like neighbouring Thorpe Willoughby, Brayton is a very residential part of Selby, and we're heading through Moat Way now. It's a long street, it's a dead end, but there is a useful footpath at the end of it, one of the very few in Brayton. That will take us up towards the community centre and then on to the church. Most of this is just housing, so this section will be pretty quick. Moat Way is just one of many residential areas in Brayton and one of the newest at its northernmost point. The reasons why Brayton has become so residential vary greatly. In the 1970s, the building of both Eggborough and Drax power stations and the approval of Selby Coalfield increased the population here. These days it's a convenient commuter settlement for those working in both Selby and also in York. It's an attractive place to live now. Something of a rarity these days, Brayton's population has gradually been reducing over the last few decades. Its population currently stands at 5,299. We've reached Brayton Community Centre now, which is a thriving base for many a village event. It's surrounded by wonderful green borders and trees. It's a fantastic multi-purpose building and sports an adjoining children's playground. So at the community centre there's a little playing field and a little playground with a multi-use games area. I always like to see these things, they're very useful things. Use them for all kinds of sports, basketball, football, and other things I suppose. I know I used to use them when I was a kid. There's also a recycling area behind that. There's a wildlife area somewhere, which the sign for it was pointing over this direction. I'm going this way anyway because you can see the church spires there. So we'll head over here, see if we can spot the wildlife area on the walk to the church. No luck on the wildlife area, I'm afraid, so it's straight up this track adjoining a field towards Brayton's Grade 1 listed church, dedicated to St Wilfrid. Immediately to the west of the church is the rectory. That's this large white building seen here. The parish hall is also within the churchyard grounds. There are no known remains of an earlier church here, but it's believed there would have been a Saxon church originally here, probably built of wood. This church was linked closely with Selby Abbey up to the dissolution of the monasteries in 1539. The oldest parts of the church, therefore, were probably built by the Abbot of Selby in around 1100 AD. So under the church tower here, we've got a very interesting grave. In here are the remains of Richard Brooke of Gateford, and there's all sorts of information on this side, but I'm more interested in what's on the other side, because on his death, his wife, Mrs. Brooke, left a lot of money. It's all listed on this side of the tomb, and these are the places where it was left to. So we've got Leeds General Infirmary, the Royal Albert Asylum at Lancaster for idiots and imbeciles of the northern counties. That sounds like something I should be in. The County Hospital at York, the Cookridge Convalescent Home at Leeds, the Christian Knowledge Society, and the British and Foreign Bible Society. And then there's a few others by her will, bequeathed the following legacies amongst many others. There's probably going to be more than that, but there are a few others there. And I'm interested as well in these sums of money. Look, £30,000, 30,000, 15,000, 10,000, 500, 500, 4,000, 2,000, 2,000, and this is all old money as well. Look, pounds, shillings and pence, pounds S&D. Anyone who's not familiar with that, it's the old money before decimalisation, and £30,000 in those days was a heck of a lot of money, way more than it is now. St Wilfrid's is an iconic local landmark with its huge spire towering over everything. The church dates from the 12th to the 15th centuries. It has some alterations and some stained glass, both which date from the 19th century. I'd have liked to have got inside this one, but it was locked. As well as that interesting tomb on the outside, inside the church is the tomb of Lord George Darcy, who died in 1558, which has some damaged effigies. This next part of the route sees us traverse this footpath which runs around the back of a housing estate before emerging onto Englehart Close. This looks okay at this point, but that quickly changed. This point along it is about halfway down the path, and I'd already had to fight with some ridiculous overgrowth. Come with me down the rest of it, and you'll see what I mean. I've been down some pretty horrible footpaths in my time, but this one takes the biscuit. Look at this. I've got to somehow squeeze my way down here. This thankfully does lead to a road, which I can't see, but obviously these boards to my left are an indication that we are close to civilization. This is clearly not very well maintained, and it needs to be, because obviously a public footpath is designed for people to walk down, and you know, if you can't walk down them easily, then they're not really footpaths anymore, they just become obstacle courses. But yeah, there is an exit to this somewhere up here. After my little adventure through that minefield of nettles and other undesirable vegetation, we arrive on Homefield as we close in on our next landmark, Homefield Vets, which has two branches, one in Brayton and one in Sherburn in Elmet. As well as domestic animals such as cats, dogs and rabbits, this is also an exotic friendly practice which will treat lizards, snakes, reptiles and birds. Next, we're going to take a left turn up towards the Methodist Church. This was built in 1844, extended in 1961 and redeveloped in 1994. It's reputed that John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, who we learned about way back in Epworth, preached on the original village green, the small triangle of land in front of this. There's no documentary evidence to prove that, but being a small person, it's also reputed that he stood on a chair in order to be seen, and allegedly that chair has been used in the chapel's pulpit ever since it was built. And so the Methodist Church stands in front of this lovely little green where there's a nice shady cool bench, which I'm just going to perch myself on for a few moments before I carry on. Back at it after a short rest, we've got the primary school next. Brayton's current primary sits adjacent to the old infant school constructed in 1872. The old schoolroom is now a small part of an extended building. On the wall there's a small plaque which remembers the former pupils of this school lost to war. On Christmas Eve 1918, a single horse chestnut tree was planted in the school playground in honour of those killed in World War I. Over the green is Dawson's Butchers, something of a Brayton institution. Set up in 1960, this traded as a high-class butcher with its own abattoir. The original shop was demolished in the 1980s to make way for a housing development, at which point it moved to its current premises in what is now a converted manor farmhouse. Hitting the crossroads again, it's time I stuck a card on a parish notice board. 5 left in Selby now. Okay, we're almost all the way around the route. A couple of things left. One of them is the Brayton Scout and Guide headquarters, not far from the post office. This building right here. The last section sees us turn onto Mill Lane, and along here there was Brayton Farm Shop, which permanently closed late last year. A unique shop, it was well loved by many people both in Brayton and further afield. Mill Lane is so named because at one time there was a windmill here. This is referenced in a few ways, but most notably by the presence of Windmill Court, a small new build area right on the end of Mill Lane. Mill Lane, by the way, used to connect Brayton to Gateford before the A63 Selby bypass was built. And that's pretty much that for the main walk around. We do have some other bits to drive to, but before those, we've got today's picture bit. So now we're going for a drive up into Selby. Part of Brayton Parish covers the southwestern suburbs of the town. Within these are some more schools. On the right here, for example, is St Mary's Catholic Primary School. I should also mention Brayton Academy, which you've just seen in today's picture bit. It was neither on our walking route nor on this drive. It's located on the A19 to the west of this estate. It was formerly known as Brayton High School and is one of the smaller secondary schools in Selby, currently only catering for some 600 students, but it can accommodate well over 1,200. It's somewhat reduced in size over recent years. There's another school to pass in a moment, but the rest of this estate isn't really much to write home about in truth, but there is a point to this little drive around. Myrtle Avenue is where the other school is located, named Longman's Hill, which incidentally is also the name of the street I'm heading for. It runs alongside the western edge of Selby Cemetery. Half of Selby Cemetery falls within Brayton's boundaries. Brayton does have its own cemetery too, off Brackenhill Lane, which again you've just seen in the picture bit. In comparison to this one, it's much smaller. So I thought it was a good idea to include Selby Cemetery in this episode, considering that half of it is in Brayton anyway, and it also saves me trying to add it to the Selby episode, which is going to be big enough as it is. So here we are then, in the cemetery. Just walked in the main entrance. We are actually in the Selby half of the cemetery here. The other half is that away. We'll just have a quick look around and see what we can see if there's anything of interest. These two buildings for a starter, quite interesting, aren't they? These are the Selby Cemetery chapels, which date from the Victorian era, although I couldn't be more precise with an exact year. In 2019, plans were put forward to restore these, along with something called the 1811 building elsewhere in the town. The cemetery itself spans a vast area and includes war graves from both world wars. There are many who died during World War I buried throughout the cemetery. During World War II, a piece of ground was purposely set aside for war graves from the Second World War. There's also a memorial to those who served in South Africa during the Boer War. There's a high proportion of airmen's graves here, accounted for by the number of airfields established in this district, a lot of which we've already been to, like Church Fenton, Burn and Sherburn in Elmet, to name but three. Always peaceful places, cemeteries. This one's quite well covered with trees as well, so it's shady too. Shady, cool, peaceful. It's nice. And it's open from 8 until 8. From April to October, and 8 until 6, November to March. Okay, let's move on. There's one final thing I want to cover, or should I say two final things, because it's kind of two things in one. This also involves using the car. We're going to drive down to Brayton Bridge and also to see the site of the former Brayton railway station. Brayton Bridge is a Grade 2 listed road bridge which spans the Selby Canal. It dates from the late 18th century, and it's a single file bridge with traffic crossing it, controlled by traffic lights. There's a pipe bridge immediately north of the road bridge too. It's been a long time since we saw the Selby Canal. I think the last time it was mentioned was way back in the Burn episode. Here's a little refresher. The canal was built in the 1770s by the Air and Calder Canal Company, who were worried by rumours of a planned canal between Leeds and Selby, which could have taken some of their business. As a result, it was dug in a hurry, and it's only 3.5 feet deep. Part of the Trans-Pennine Trail runs northward along its towpath from here to where it meets the River Ouse. Its southern end, of course, can be found at the lock at West Haddlesey. So that's the canal and Brayton Bridge, and now a short walk away we've got the railway line and the site of the former Brayton railway station. Here we have Brayton Level Crossing. The line here is part of the old East Coast Main Line, which branches from the current line at Templehurst. Relatively few trains now use this on any given day. Now I have to admit, the only indication I had that Brayton once had a railway station before coming here was a location marker on Google Maps, which points to the crossing. This overgrown entrance is likely where it actually was. This station though may not have existed at all. I did an extensive amount of digging after this visit to find some things about it. However, I came up empty, meaning if this was Brayton Station, it's somewhat of a mystery. Selby used to have a station named Brayton Gates, but that was located further north, close to the cemetery. Could this be a Google Maps error, folks, or was there really a station here? Let me know if you know. I'd be fascinated to find out. And there you have it. That is Brayton. I do hope you've enjoyed this one. It's been a lovely one to do this. Very varied, lots of things to talk about. It's the kind of place I like, really. I don't like sometimes the ones that are really, really small, because if there's nothing to talk about, it doesn't make a very interesting episode. But Brayton is certainly the opposite of that. It's certainly got loads for me to get my teeth into, and I hope you have enjoyed watching this one. There are 5 left in Selby now, 4 up and around Tadcaster, and the other one, of course, is Selby itself. I'll see you next time in the district of Selby. This has been the parish of Brayton, and I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.